The dusty art room of Marigold High always smelled of clay, acrylic, and the slow decay of forgotten dreams. Inside, 17-year-old Mira Okoye hunched over her sketch pad, her fingers blackened with charcoal, her soul lit with fire. Her drawing, raw, emotional, depicted her late mother in their cluttered kitchen, a mix of warmth, struggle, and silence. It was imperfect, but it was truth. Her classmates had long written her off. The girl who smelled faintly of kerosene and always wore the same worn-out shoes. But Mira didn't care. She had her art, her lifeline. That day, as she added final details to her piece for the school's Freedom of Expression art showcase, the heavy door creaked open. In stepped Principal Moreo Jenkins, a woman whose pressed suits and tight chignons were as rigid as her moral code. She frowned at the canvases lining the room, eyes scanning for rebellion. Her gaze landed on Myra's drawing. She stopped, her lips curled. "This is inappropriate," she declared, her voice cold. "Who drew this?" Mira stood slowly, her fingers trembling. "I did." Principal Jenkins ripped the sketch from the easel, holding it as if it were contaminated. "This is not art. This is poverty porn. It paints our school and your community in shame. It will not be displayed." Myra's world shattered with those words. Words spread quickly. Mira had been banned from the exhibition, her drawing discarded, her name removed from the roster. The other students whispered. Some pitted. Others laughed. "She should have known," a girl snorted. "You don't embarrass the school like that." But Myra's art wasn't meant to embarrass. It was meant to speak. About the real world. About her life. About her mother, who died scraping together enough to buy her a pencil set. About a father who hadn't come back since she was 9. She went home that night in silence. The small one-room apartment she shared with her grandmother seemed darker than usual. The old woman, blind and fading, called out from the cot. "Mira, you home?" "Yes, Nana." "You draw something beautiful today?" Mira hesitated, her throat tight. "Yes." "Good. One day they'll see. The world will see." Mira clutched her sketchbook tightly and fought tears. Unbeknownst to Principal Jenkins, Mr. Sam Dyke, the school's new art teacher, had seen the drawing before it was seized. He'd only been there a month, a quiet man with a limp and soft eyes. He'd once taught at a prestigious art academy in Cape Town before a scandal ruined his career. Now he taught here, in the corners of a forgotten school. He approached Mira the next day as she sat alone in the empty art room. "I saw it," he said gently. "You're drawing. It's honest. Rare. You have a gift." Mira looked up, her eyes guarded. "It doesn't matter. The principal said it's not art." Mr. Dyke smiled faintly. "Then she doesn't know art." He offered her a card. "There's a youth exhibit downtown in 2 weeks. Real curators. Real critics. You should enter." Mira hesitated. "She'll ban me again." "Then don't tell her." That night, Mira redrew the entire piece from scratch, every wrinkle in her mother's face, every smudge on the wall. But this time, she added herself to the background, watching, sketching, a silent witness. Using an old photo of her mother for reference and the little light from the cracked window, Mira worked deep into the night. Each stroke was a memory, each shadow a sigh. She didn't have a frame, so she painted on a flattened cardboard box. On the day of the submission, she skipped school, risking punishment, and boarded a rickety bus into the city with Mr. Dyke's help. The venue was unlike anything she'd ever seen. White walls, spotlights, whispering people with expensive glasses and notebooks. She felt like an intruder. Still, Mira hung her drawing on the wall and signed, with only the title, Unseen. She didn't stay for the event. She left before anyone could laugh or point. She returned to school the next day, silent and scared. Principal Jenkins met her at the gate. "You missed school yesterday." "Where were you?" Mira bowed her head. "Nowhere." But behind her, Mr. Dyke stood smiling faintly. That weekend, the exhibit went viral. A popular art blogger had posted a picture of Unseen, calling it the rawest thing I've seen this year. She captured pain without pity. The blog read, "This is more than a drawing. It's a statement." Soon, People online began searching for the artist. Curators speculated. Was it Prodigy? A forgotten master? A street artist? Meanwhile, Principal Jenkins saw the post while scrolling during her pedicure appointment. She paused, eyes narrowing. That face in the sketch. That kitchen. That style. No, it couldn't be. Could it? Mira sat at the back of class, eyes lowered. Her classmates murmured about the now-famous sketch online. That drawing, though, it's everywhere. I heard they don't even know who did it. Principal Jenkins paced her office, unsettled. The resemblance. The message. The audacity. She reopened the photo on her phone. Something gnawed at her, a strange mix of déjà vu and dread. At last, she called Mr. Dyke to her office. Do you know anything about this drawing? It looks suspiciously familiar. Mr. Dyke shrugged, carefully neutral. A lot of students draw kitchens and grief. But this one is being hailed as a masterpiece. If someone from my school drew it, why wasn't it submitted through proper channels? Maybe because they were told their truth was inappropriate. Her jaw tightened. You're walking a thin line, Mr. Dyke. And so are you, he replied quietly and left. Days later, a local art magazine published an article. Unseen Artist Revealed. Meet Mira Okoye. The journalist had traced the signature, hidden in the drawing's background, etched subtly on a wall in the scene. Social media lit up. A girl from the slums? A school nobody had heard of? The daughter of a cleaner who died working 3 jobs? Offers began flooding in. Invitations. Interviews. And just like that, Mira had a name. But Principal Jenkins was furious. She stormed into Mr. Dyke's class during session. You encourage her to defy school policy, to misrepresent us. She represented herself, and the world listened. You'll both face disciplinary action for this insubordination. But before she could finish, her phone buzzed. A call from the Ministry of Arts and Culture. She stepped out to answer, and her face drained of color. The voice on the line was confident and calm. Principal Jenkins, this is Director Adebayo. We'd like to commend your school for producing such a bold and talented artist. Jenkins fumbled. Of course. Yes, we encourage creativity. We'd love to honor both the student and the institution. There'll be a feature in Art Nation Weekly, and we plan to invite you to speak at our annual Education and Culture Conference. Her heart raced. This could boost her profile. Take her from district principal to regional education board, maybe even national. I'll arrange for Mira to be present. She lied smoothly. Perfect. And if possible, we'd love to view more of her work. Perhaps the school could showcase it. Jenkins smiled tightly. Absolutely. As the call ended, she clenched her fist. The very art she tried to erase would now be her ladder. But she had no idea that the ladder would soon collapse beneath her. Suddenly, Mira was the school star. Her picture printed in newsletters, banners hung in the hallway. Principal Jenkins paraded her through assemblies, even forced her to speak at staff meetings. We are proud of our Mira, Jenkins said, clapping hard. She is proof that with guidance, even the most lost can find light. Mira stood stiffly beside her, a plastic smile on her face. She knew the truth. They didn't care about her art, only what it could do for them. Mr. Dyke pulled her aside later. You don't owe them your voice. But I owe my grandmother peace, Mira said. She sleeps easier now, knowing the world finally sees me. He nodded slowly. Then make them see all of you. Weeks later, Mira received a personal invitation from Freedom Collective, a prestigious international art circle. They wanted to fly her to South Africa for an exhibition. Your piece, Unseen, will be framed and placed at the center of our showcase. When Principal Jenkins found out, she tried to insert herself. I'll accompany Mira as her official supervisor. But the letter made it clear, the artist alone. Jenkins seethed. Mira packed quietly, tucking a small photo of her mother into her suitcase. For the first time, Mira boarded a plane. From a slum girl who used charcoal on scrap cardboard to an international voice. Her story now traveled on winds she never imagined. In South Africa, she was greeted like royalty. The gallery was vast, glittering, filled with cameras and champagne. In the center, Her drawing, professionally restored and beautifully framed. Critics called it the pulse of generation. She gave a short speech, shaky but sincere. I didn't draw this for fame. I drew it because I needed to remember my mother. I needed to remind myself that pain is real and survival is beautiful. The room stood still, then erupted in applause. Back in Nigeria, Principal Jenkins watched the televised clip with a glass of wine in hand. She'd lost control of her narrative. While Mira thrived abroad, things back home began to unravel. Mr. Dyke received a letter. An anonymous envelope slipped into his office drawer. Inside, photocopies of misappropriated school funds linked to art program enrichment, money Jenkins had allegedly diverted for years. And one receipt was recent, ironically tied to sponsoring Myra's growth. He took it to the district board. Within a week, an audit was launched. Investigators began probing into school accounts, interviewing staff. Jenkins, blindsided, tried to cover her tracks, but the documents were thorough. Dates, bank transfers, falsified student projects. Her empire was built on lies, and now it was crumbling. Back in Nigeria, Mira returned home to find her grandmother weak, her voice fading. "My baby," she whispered, "I saw you. On TV. You were shining." Mira held her hand tightly, tears flowing. "They see me now, Nana, because you saw me first." The old woman smiled and passed away peacefully that night. At her funeral, Mira placed her latest sketch on the coffin lid, a drawing of them both, sitting in their one-room apartment, surrounded by dreams. She vowed to honor her always. Weeks later, a renowned museum in Lagos reached out. "We want Unseen permanently. It deserves a home here. It will hang next to works of Nigeria's greatest visual artists." Mira agreed, but on one condition. "I want the donation plaque to say, 'To Nana, who saw me first.'" They obliged. The night of the unveiling, a crowd gathered, press, dignitaries, and even school representatives. And in the back of the room, nearly unrecognizable in plain clothes, stood Principal Jenkins. She stared hollow-eyed at the drawing she once called poverty porn, now gloriously framed, revered, and immortalized. As the crowd moved to admire the piece, Jenkins tried to slip out unnoticed. But Mr. Dyke stopped her. "I hear the investigation's wrapping up. They found everything, even your Swiss account." Her mouth opened, but no words came. "Funny," he added, "how a girl's inappropriate drawing brought all your secrets into the light." He turned and walked away. Jenkins stood alone, eclipsed by the very truth she tried to erase. And above her, framed in gold, Myra's drawing looked down on the world. Months after the unveiling, Mira found herself flooded with messages. Students, teachers, artists, and even parents. One stood out. "Your drawing saved my daughter. She saw herself in your story. Now she paints again." Mira realized her art was more than personal. It was universal. So she decided to do something bold. Start a community art foundation for children from underprivileged backgrounds. She named it the Unseen Foundation. Its mission? To give visibility to voices often erased. With a few grants, help from Mr. Dyke, and her growing influence, the foundation held its first weekend workshop under a bridge near Lagos Island, where children sketched on flattened cartons just like Mira once did. The media showed up. So, did opportunity. Meanwhile, Principal Jenkins faced formal charges: embezzlement, abuse of authority, falsification of academic records. The district board suspended her indefinitely. The final nail? A televised expose titled "Power, Pride, and a Pencil: The Real Story Behind the Drawing." The documentary aired grainy footage of Jenkins tearing down Myra's first sketch, her voice sharp, dismissive. It ended with slow zoom on the now-famous framed version in the museum, narrated by Myra's voice. "She tried to erase me, but you can't erase what's true." The nation reacted with fury and relief. Jenkins became a symbol of a broken system. A trending hashtag emerged. #WeAreUnseen. With the media frenzy came curiosity about the quiet man who first believed in Mira. Journalists uncovered his past, how he wanted to expose corruption at a high-end Cape Town art institute and was blacklisted for it. His decision to mend her mirror was seen as a continuation of his moral rebellion. Soon, schools and galleries began offering him roles. But he stayed. "This isn't finished," he told Mira. "There are more Miras here." She smiled. "Then let's find them." During a school assembly at Marigold High, the acting principal invited Mira to speak. It was surreal, standing on the same stage where she was once ignored. But she didn't speak about herself. She spoke about Shola, the boy who used to draw comics in the margins of textbooks. About Tari, the girl whose sculptures were called childish. About every student ever told their dreams were too messy, too ugly, or too poor. The hall went silent. Then applause. Tears. A few teachers cried openly. And in the back, Shola stood quietly sketching. One evening, Mira received a letter from a French curator. They'd seen her museum piece and wanted her to join an international collective that showcased underground brilliance. Expenses covered. Creative freedom guaranteed. But Mira hesitated. It was everything she once dreamed. Yet something tugged at her, a voice from within. Her mother's voice. Nurture where you bloomed. She declined the offer respectfully and instead proposed something else. "I'd be honored to collaborate, but my base stays here." They agreed. Mira was no longer chasing escape. She was building a bridge. The Unseen Foundation organized its biggest event yet, the exhibition of the unheard. Children from Akoko, Ajigunle, and even displaced northern communities brought pieces that shocked, moved, and inspired the public. Pieces made of recycled wood, wall soot, crushed crayons. At the center was a mural the children painted together, depicting a girl drawing by candlelight while the world outside her window looked away. It was titled, "But I Saw Her." The event drew thousands. News anchors covered it. International galleries requested reproductions. And Mira, she wept quietly in the back. Her pain had become a platform. Months later, Nigeria's Minister of Education visited the foundation, citing it as a model for arts-based inclusion and innovation. He offered Mira a government partnership, full funding, national rollout. Mira paused. "I'll accept on 2 conditions. Name them. 1, I choose the teachers. And 2, I want art reintroduced into every public school curriculum. No token programs. Real education." The minister blinked, then nodded. "You have it." A year after Unseen was first framed in the museum, the gallery held an anniversary ceremony. Critics, dignitaries, and emerging artists gathered, and for the first time, Myra's face was featured next to the drawing. They unveiled a new plaque beneath the frame, the one they tried to silence, the voice that shaped a nation. People clapped, but Mira looked over at a smaller frame beside hers, newly added. It was one of her students' works, a raw painting titled "Dust and Hope." She smiled. The legacy was growing. An international journalist interviewed Mira for a feature on women who changed the narrative. The final question caught her off guard. If Principal Jenkins hadn't banned your drawing, do you think any of this would have happened? Mira thought. No, I don't think she knew she was lighting a fire. She thought she was snuffing out a candle. And do you forgive her? A pause. Yes, because holding on to pain keeps you in the past. And I'm painting forward. One afternoon, Mira walked past Marigold High's old art room. It had been abandoned since the scandal. Dusty, forgotten. She stepped inside. On the wall was a faded note scrawled in chalk. Art is the echo of soul. She pulled out a marker and added below it. And some echoes can never be silenced. As she turned to leave, she saw a young girl, no more than 10, peeking through the doorway. Mira smiled and held out a blank page. Want to draw? The girl nodded, and history began again. 2 years had passed. Myra's name now resonated far beyond Nigeria. Her foundation had launched branches in Kenya, Ghana, and even a pilot program in South Africa. Children who once had no voice now had entire walls to speak from. Her drawing, Unseen, was featured in an international exhibit called Resistance to Reflection. It was displayed alongside works by Frida Kahlo, Jean-Michel Basquiat, and Ben Nwanwu. at the exhibit's opening in Paris. The host called her up. From discarded cardboard to global canvas, please welcome Mira Okoye. But as she stood before the crowd, she didn't speak about herself. Instead, she told the story of a principal who tore her drawing in half and accidentally ripped the veil off a broken system. Meanwhile, Moreo Jenkins, once a polished, powerful principal, now worked quietly at a public literacy center in Ibadan. Her name erased from every plaque, her ambition buried beneath scandal. But every now and then, when she picked up a newspaper or scrolled through her phone at the local cafe, Myra's face stared back at her, not with revenge, but radiant success. It haunted her. Then one day, a letter arrived at her small apartment. No return address. It read, "Your rejection taught me to stand. Your silence taught me to speak louder. Thank you, M.O." Inside the envelope was a miniature print of Unseen, delicately framed. She stared at it for a long time, and for the first time in years, she cried. Back home, Mira was preparing for her most ambitious project yet, the Forgotten Walls Initiative, a citywide transformation of dilapidated buildings into canvases, where survivors of war, poverty, and domestic abuse could tell their stories through murals. One building stood out, a long-abandoned colonial school in Yaba. It was covered in rot and graffiti. Mira walked into a classroom with shattered windows and found something scrawled faintly into the wall. "We were never seen here." She stood silently for a moment, then picked up a brush. Just before the official mural unveiling, Mira received an email from the United Nations. They were inviting her to serve as a global youth creativity ambassador. Her foundation would receive international backing. She would tour schools worldwide, speak to policymakers. Mira stared at the screen for a long time. Then she looked around her modest studio, filled with children's sketches and donated pencils. She thought of Nana, Mr. Dyke, even Jenkins, and she typed one word, "Yes." At the International Summit in Geneva, Mira stepped onto a grand stage beneath banners of global changemakers. Her story was featured in a powerful video montage, images of her childhood apartment, her original drawing, her rejection, her rise. As the video ended, thunderous applause filled the room. She took the podium and paused. Then she said, "I wasn't born with wealth, but I was born with eyes that saw truth. I wasn't taught to shout, so I learned to draw loud enough to be heard. I once believed being unseen was a curse, but I've learned, sometimes, being unseen gives you the freedom to create without chains." She held up a fresh sketch, one she made just that morning. It showed a faceless girl holding a pencil like a sword, standing tall before a mountain of closed doors. The crowd stood in silence. Then, one by one, they rose. A standing ovation. Back in Lagos, Unseen now sat behind bulletproof glass in the National Museum's Voices of Africa wing. Students from across the continent visited, pausing to read the plaque. Drawn by a student told her truth was too raw, now honored as a truth that opened every eye. Mr. Dyke retired that year, choosing to write a book titled Lines That Spoke Louder. Its cover bore Myra's first sketch. At her old school, a new wing was built, the Mira Okoye Center for Arts and Expression, and in a corner of her foundation, hanging beside the first drawing she ever made on cardboard, was a faded report card, one with a red mark beside art. 55% needs direction. Underneath, Mira had scribbled, "Direction found." When they tried to silence her, she drew louder. When they banned her, she built platforms. And when they turned away, the world turned toward her, because truth can't be banned. And even cardboard can carry a masterpiece